uh, during the 9 dreadful years we had. So eventually it came together. I think Joe wrote it wonderfully, and we took little bits of tweaks and so on. And thankfully, one heritage publisher in our city, our province, Anivesh Singh of Micromega, he put it together, and we got the book to see the light of day. And we're just grateful for the support from the Naika family towards that publications, that books are out there. Mamta, you sort of hold it and wave it to somebody who's not seen it. Great, yeah. And its title is Love for Learning, the biography of Saro Naika as told to Gulam Raju. All right, so I hope, Joe, that is sort of sets the stage of where we're at today. Many people here are already acquainted with you. Although you're in Canada right now and you teach at university there, tell us a word or two with your background here in the country in education. Oh, please feel welcome, young man. Just grab a seat where you're. Welcome. And more of you. So lovely to see you. Thank you. Just grab a bite to eat outside there, and then come and seat yourselves. Yeah. So, hello.
It's hard to speak truthfully about yourself when you have a former student in the audience. I'm privileged to be the Afrikaans teacher of Ravi Pillay for several years. So I can speak eloquently about his antics in the classroom, more so than I can do myself.
It was a bit stout.
Yes, I think I was called the dragon in those years. I have an interest in life stories. I have an interest in my family history. So I've written my own family history from the 1706 to 1945 when my mother fell pregnant with me. And I'm reluctant to write 46 to 2025 because it's my own story. And I'll be 80 next year, the grandfather of 6 and the great-grandfather of 5.
You're blessed.
And I'm still involved in teaching because teaching is my passion. After teaching in Port Shepstone for 13 years and putting up with people like unmentionables, I emigrated to Canada, a decision I was pleased with, and I retired from the public school system in 2002, and the Christian University invited me to become the registrar and the associate dean, so that's a position I'm occupying right now. I do teach, but I teach online right now. And shall I start with Auntie now or later on?
Well, let me prod you there. But let me acknowledge the young people. We're usually oldies that sit through these stories, so really good having, and Sarania also here. And this is the story for your generation. So my name is Kiru Naidu, and I was just introducing this earlier. This is our symbolic commemoration of 70 years of the Freedom Charter. So you're part of another part of history in the making that we can acknowledge this. And we're just talking to the author, Joe Raju here. Joe, maybe just take us back, like first book of the Bible, Genesis.
In the beginning.
In the beginning, yes.
In the beginning was Saro Naika, and so the story unfolds. I love writing. I'm an English professor. I love writing. I love reading writing. I love life stories because it's the stories that our legacy we leave behind. And the more silent we are with our stories, the less the world hears. We hear about the prominent people. I heard about Monty Naika. I heard about MP Naika. But behind MP Naika stood a giant which we don't talk about. We know Ravi Pillay, but it's actually his wife that really turns his crank. And those of you that are married, you know the role that the wife plays in your life. And we take the accolades, but it's the spouse that supports them. And so going back to Mrs. Naika, I'm going to call her Auntie if you don't mind, Auntie Saro. So she visited me because she happens to be related to MS Naidu, a math teacher and a colleague of mine in Canada. And you came with your sister Devi, Auntie, and they happened to visit us, and I'm a very inquisitive brat. I ask questions all the time. And so I started asking you questions. Where are you from? Oh, you're from London. What are you doing in London? You're an Indian. You're supposed to be in South Africa, maybe India. What are you doing in London? And then the story unraveled. And then this is the part that tweaked me. This is the genesis of the whole thing. She was a university graduate. And I have a love for learning. And so when university graduate, and she graduated at age 68, I think, or something like that. And she had no serious formal education, but she did all the matriculate, all this stuff, and she got a degree. Now that's what I pursue. I help my students. It's degrees in theology, but I help them through the process of getting graduated and then telling their stories. So coming back to Auntie Sora and Auntie Devi, these two sisters came to visit me in Barhead. It's a very small town. If you blink twice, you'll miss the town 3 times. That's how small it is. And that's the town I live in. But they chose to come and visit us. And so we started talking. And I was blown away because I'm also, I never went to university as such. I never went to Saskia College, but I became a teacher. At age 17, I was teaching because there was a need for Afrikaans teachers in Potchefstroom. And because I had my education in Maritzburg and I could speak fluently, they took me on as a teacher. So all my degrees were acquired by distance. And I know the effort it takes to get a degree while raising a family and having all the other responsibilities. It's easier when you're young, I think, you have more energy. But in the 60s, I don't know how you got to university, and so she told me the story. And I said, Auntie, you know what? I've got to write this story. And then on our way back to South Africa, I live in Canada, but I come to South Africa very frequently. This is my 21st visit. I come to spend 3 months here. But anyway, on one of those trips, she asked us to stay with you in London. So I went up to her flat, right? Yeah. Upstairs. And she would talk about her story. And I said, Auntie, this is not good enough. We got to record this. And my wife told Auntie, and I told you, come spend a month with us in our house. And so I would go to work, but when I come back from work, she and I would sit, and she would tell me a story, chapter by chapter by chapter. And so once the story is told, she's gone to bed, I pull out my computer, and I record that. And the next morning, I'd have a printout for her to read. And you were so fussy. You drove me crazy. She wouldn't accept even a comma that's out of place. You were so meticulous. Everything had to be absolutely right. So it's not written by me. I just was the tool that brought it together. She's the author of the book. And so we do that. In 1 month, folks, in 28 days exactly, the story was written. It was edited 3 times before Auntie was satisfied. And so when she was ready to leave to London with a boiled crab in her travel bag, and if you remember that, you took crab, you bought them in Edmonton, you boiled them, you froze them, you wrapped them up in your suitcase. Now I don't know how they went through customs, but anyway, with the crab, in the suitcase, was a printed copy of that very book.
Lovely. No, I think that start to the story is captivating enough. Maybe just for folks who don't know the backstory, you talked about England. How did you get to England?
I think Prem is more qualified to speak on that than I would. One's history.
Well, basically, my dad, he left in 65, I think he left. But he left, before then, he left the country to go to, and he left for Botswana. And he settled in Lobatse because they were the leadership of he was one of the 156 accused in the treason trial. And but he escaped sentencing. He was only held for 180 days, 90 days, and so on. And before that, endlessly, before those laws came up. So he consulted with, he was member of the M-Cells, and his commander was Bram Fischer. and they had to, when the 156 were arrested and the treason trial was on from 1956, which ended 5 years later, he then had to consult during that period, what are we going to do, how are we going to reorganize, can we reorganize inside the country? Well, most of the key leadership is now arrested. And then came the discussion inside about we need to mobilize from outside and start the armed struggle from outside. So that monumental task was given to the ANC External Mission, it was then known as. So he left from South Africa to Botswana, and in Lobatse he moved on to Kasangula, and there he met other young people like Eddie Funde and others who were the members, who later became the leader of the youth and so on in exile, and they got on very well. And from there he was sent to Lusaka. They did a plan for him. It was with Titi Nkobi and who was the Treasurer General at the time, and there was also that I forgot one of the old stalwarts as well. And they met him there and they briefed him and they worked out a plan with Oliver Tambo, how we're going to use him. He was a journalist. So they said they'd send him to the office, the London office, to run Sechaba, to start the organ, the official organ. So he was stubborn, you know, he wanted to do training. He was like a fighter, you know, he was always also on the armed struggle side. So they sent him to, I think he was trained in Libya, and then later on, I don't know where else, but lost that part of it. Nobody could really say after he died. So, but he ended up in London, Blackburn Street, and he was in the office there with Robert Kesha, Lady Konene, and others, Red September. They were all posted to run the office, and then that office became significant because it was the British Empire that South Africa fell under during the colonial period. And so it was important to study that, and that was most Mabida used to teach us as the youth. We were in the youth. I actually started by washing the floors of the office with Linda. So we started off that way, and we joined the youth, and eventually, you know, we see all the leaders. Then came Thabo Mbeki, and Aziz Bahad, Yusuf Bahad, the Fahad brothers, a whole lot of them. Suddenly the office was full of people, you know, and it was just politics from morning till evening, you know, nothing else. Even when you went to a party, it was all politics on the sideline. Anyway, that's all the additional stories, but Dad was there. And he was
still in South Africa? Mom was still in South Africa?
We were still at home. I was 15 years old, and arrangements were made for Mum to join him and my sister Sudanya. And I think the ticket was covered by the DNA, Defence and Aid, who was Canon Collins, and Diana Collins. Brilliant, wonderful people. And they put up the fares for Mum, and we traveled by boat. Now I didn't have a passport, I was underage for that, so I was given an exit visa. And Mum was given an exit visa, but I fell under her passport with an exit visa. Finished, we can't come back. And that was it. And we went by boat, and we ended up joining Mum there. Long story short.
Oh, I think that's a beautiful introduction to that. So for those of you not familiar, that's Brigadier General Dr. Prem Naik. He could have given you that lecture in Russian. I think his Russian is better than his English. So it's the story of MP Naik, and you would have caught snippets there. The editor of Sechaba, the official organ of the ANC then. And so he worked out of London, but it was published in East Germany.
East Germany.
Yeah.
Yeah, in East Berlin.
And he was also the founding director of the ANC Department of Information and Publicity. So we
Yeah.
still have
He was.
that department. And
Yeah.
his successors were Thabo Mbeki and
That's right.
others.
Yeah.
So that's how they got to England. But you discern through her biography that it wasn't just getting there and supporting her husband. She was an activist in her own right.
Yeah. I can't speak too much to the activist part of it, but I can speak to the kind of support she's been to this very prominent politician that gave up so much, including his family. I don't know how long you were separated and you live on your own. You gave up all of that, and you were the support that kept the family together. And you know, part of my training is that family is very, very important. And I know those of us that are involved in struggles usually relegate our families to second place because the struggle takes prominence. So who takes care of their own fires? And there's Auntie Saro that did that. And my interest was so much in the way she raised the family under those circumstances as a single parent. Because Uncle was quite gone most of the time, he was quite active most of the time, and she had to raise her children, support them, and also later on undertake further education. So that was my interest more than the political aspect of her life.
Yeah, sorry, this feels like an Indian business, you know, one person does all the work. But just the different, I mean, there was the ANC in exile, the external issue of the ANC. But it was also solidarity across other struggles. So what were you able to discern from Amma's work in London, the newspaper?
Again, I have to give her the credit because he's more the expert in this area than I am.
And Amma can also speak for herself there on some of those things.
Let's tweak our mind a little bit.
Yeah.
You want to ask about the newspapers?
Yeah.
Ma, Papa worked at the New Age in Grey Street in Lotson House. Yeah, you remember that?
Yes.
Now, the New Age, before that, it was known under a different name. Can you remember what name that paper was? Then it was called New Age. It was banned. Every time it was banned. Can you remember?
I think Spark.
There was Spark. Can you remember the others? That was banned and then came Clarion, was it? Clarion.
Clarion. Yeah, I don't know which came first.
Oh, okay, yeah, me too, I don't know which one. And then came which one? Can you remember? Guardian?
Yeah, I don't know which one came first.
Yeah. But just name them if you can remember them.
Yeah.
All right. No, it's difficult. I mean,
And in London, the newspapers,
there was, only Sitaba.
no, socialist worker and so on.
Oh, that
No.
that belonged to, no. That was from this guy, from the leftist workers party. He was a South African guy, a white guy, and what was his name? Can't remember. We should have a lot of discussions with him. You know, that's the workers. And then there was MD Naidu's newspaper. He opened up ICSA. You know about ICSA? ICSA was it was an the International Committee on South Africa. He was heading it. He was the editor of the newsletter. So he was MD Naidu, ex to what's her name? Phyllis Naidu. So that was being published separately from the ANC. Then came Janashakti. Janashakti was an initiative to try and give input into the struggle to the Indian population. Yeah? And so we used to do crazy things, and we were left on the hand for that. I used to send Sichava Well, Dhanashakti was a small pamphlet, it was 3-4 pages. But that I never saw then. It was just quietly sent in batches. And they were bombed with leaflets and so on in the Indian area. But we used to send it to people we used to go to school with. Until one of them wrote back and said, "Don't do this, the police are turning up here."
Okay. Well, I know the rest of you are not quite 97, but some of you will have some recollections of this period, even if it were stories told. So I want to bring you into the conversation, if you can recall anything of that time or anything that you might have picked up. I know Gulsher has been doing some amazing archival work. But well, while you're thinking of that, Joe, you know, you write, or you gathered her story very eloquently of the early days in May Street. Right? So this is the Greyville area of Durban, if you're not familiar. And you know, May Street was the subject of forced removals under the Group Areas Act. But it was a vibrant community, and she talks a great deal about being a young bride there and so on. Just want to reflect on that period?
I'd rather not, because I will sell more books.
Oh, yeah. Well, Mata, hold up that book, because I want to just, yeah. So that's Mrs. Naika there, holding Prem, was 7 months old there. 11 months old. And she had just been released from prison in the 1952 Defiance campaign. And Chief Lutuli was there to welcome her. Yeah, so, yeah, you're going to sell more books after I've done that marketing. But just characterize that period and the household and so on.
Yeah, I don't know how many of you are familiar with this, but in my generation, my parents didn't live on their own. They lived with the in-laws. And the daughter-in-law of the house, I'll talk about my family. I thought my mother was a slave because she was the eldest daughter-in-law. And she had to provide not only for her husband, not only for her in-laws, for all the young siblings. And that's a difficult way to raise your children and to make a name for your children and protect your children, because as soon as you start protecting your children, jealousies arose because you're favoring your children over your nephews and nieces. And how does a mother deal with all of that and still be a dutiful daughter-in-law and a wife and a mother, protecting your children, protecting the tribe, and yet not being accused of favoritism? And you grow up in that kind of environment, and not wealthy environment, and most of you can relate to this, not the younger generation, because you guys have golden spoons in your mouths, but those from our generation, just living was a struggle in itself. And then you had to put food on the table for so many people. So in addition to the struggles of the economic struggles, and your family, societal struggles, you have political struggles intervening as well. And the role of women, Indian women, in my much earlier generation, quite different from today. They were subservient, and they had to be in the shadows all the time. And Auntie didn't have much formal education. How much did she?
She's Standard 4.
Standard 4.
Yeah.
Standard 4, then, you know, grade 6 right now, right? Yeah. Very little education. And so, I think about, my mother is very similar. My mother will be over 100 right now. They're very similar circumstances. But look at the sacrifices that Auntie had to make. So that, look where her son is today. You heard his title. You know, it's mind-boggling, and that's true of a number of our generations here. And I know some of you in this room, and where you grew from, the circumstances you grew from, is because of mothers like this that would take all of these factors and somehow make it work. So your generation, my generation, day to day live a lifestyle that's opulent, and you have everything. And on an aside, I've got 5 great-grandchildren, and you just wonder about their future because they grew up with everything. Like Tata, in my case, I'm the Peda Tata, which means big grandfather. Other Tata is going to be there. We didn't grow up like that. And I wonder what we're doing to our younger generation when we are spoon feeding them. Because we didn't have it, we want to make sure that they have it. Are we damaging this? Do we have the kind of people like this that showed real love, true love? They didn't throw a candy bag at you to please you, but they showed genuine love. They made sacrifices. And I wouldn't be surprised if Mom went to sleep several nights without food, because all the others had to be fed. And I can relate to that. Because I remember my mother sitting in the corner of the kitchen and scraping the leftovers from the pot with a few rice grains so she could live while we were fed. And that's the lady we
And
are.
she ate last.
Last, if she had food to eat. And that's the kind of struggle that Auntie went through, so that today your children can be so accomplished. We're honoring you. I'm emotional just thinking about the sacrifices you made, not only for your children, but for all of us. What you've done, your house was a center for all the activists coming. I don't know how you managed feeding all those people. You know, working so hard so that we can enjoy freedom today. We talk about the Charter of Freedom. That is the founder. These are the people behind the scenes that made it happen.
Amma, you were telling me a few weeks ago at your home about the 1946 passive resistance, the 1952 defiance campaign, and although MP wanted you to be involved, your mother-in-law didn't want you to get involved. Just tell us about your mother-in-law and why she didn't want you to get involved in meetings and in activism, even though you eventually did. What did your mother-in-law say to you when MP asked you to come and join?
She shouted at him. She said, "You getting involved, don't involve your wife too."
But in 1952, in the Defiance campaign, you went to prison.
Yes.
Where were you in prison?
Durban prison. For the month.
And you were sentenced to hard labor. So what hard labor did you do in prison?
It was a women's prison, so they didn't give us hand brushes to brush the dirt away. The clothing that these men wore when they were fighting in the docks, dirty, filthy clothes. And so the women felt very sorry, because their hands would get soiled. So they somehow brought a brush to use the brush to brush the dirt away. So that's
Yeah, so these were the women prisoners who were criminally convicted, would assist you all because you all were political prisoners. They didn't want you to hurt your hands because they looked up to you as political prisoners.
Can you say it again?
Yeah, no, the criminal, people who were sentenced for criminal activities helped you all because they looked up to you because you were political prisoners.
Yeah.
And then bringing you coffee and biscuits and so on. Do you remember any of that?
How many years in prison?
No. When the other prisoners, because they liked you, would hide and bring you coffee and things. Can you remember that? Or tap on your cell and bring you coffee and things?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Tell us a bit more.
Yeah. What they did, for the white prisoners, these people were caring, they were guarding them, that they don't escape and so on. But we'll be locked up after tea in our cells, and they knock. There's such a way, there's a signal to say, it's okay, open the door, and then they'll peek through and they'll say, look, we got some tea, we want to give you. That's how. And some of the others will keep quiet. They won't, because they get caught. You're not supposed to have tea or anything.
Very good. No, thank you for that. Selvan, when you're 97, I want you to answer questions like this. No?
I'm going to give you a tea.
All right. Let's bring the rest of you into the conversation, and if there are questions or observations or any comments or anything that you want to share, please feel free. Professor Reddy.
Thank you very much for sharing those insights with us. What I wanted to ask you is that, if I heard you correctly, my hearing is not that good, is that you wrote this over a period of 28 days by just listening to therapy. Was this entirely an oral history? You didn't consult any documents, any references, you didn't talk to anybody else?
No, this is not a historical, it wasn't meant for publication. I said, Auntie, let's record this, at least for your children. And we wrote the book, no intention to make it public at all. It was her story that I wanted you and your sister to know the struggle. And so I don't think Mom was too excited about having it published at all. So I think it sat for a while, Brendan, in London until you discovered it, you brought it back with Mom. And that's how the book came. So it wasn't a historical at all. So there wasn't a cross-reference at all.
So that oral history must be rich with history and anecdotes. And I think it's an illustration of the power of oral history.
Yes.
I have a sister who passed away at the age of 101. And before she passed away, I'm writing my memoirs. I sat with her and try and trace some of our early history. What I learned from her within a couple of days was phenomenal. And I think the lesson for us, if we have people, in the 80s and 90s, please listen to them and capture this history. Because we have lost so much and we could lose more.
Very good. No, thank you for that. And that's the chairperson of the History Society. And we're always looking for members, so let's recruit some new members for the History Society. Professor Reddy. Thank you, sir. Any other comments, observations?
I think recently we were at the book launch of Galton's marvelous memoirs, I think also. and what Prof said.
It's there. There we go.
It's there. I've got it already. That's so important. I think when you start reading individually these books, we get a deeper sense of the time that they existed, so we're getting sort of first-hand knowledge. But touching base with what Amma was saying, during those days, the story that you narrated on her behalf, about the youngest daughter-in-law being the slave, really, was common to all our families. And it's also common that unless you belong to maybe other rich Malka families and what have you, you never got beyond Standard 4. And Standard 4 was actually considered to be a high level of education if you were a female. And even if you were male, like our parents, once you got Standard 4, you left, you went and worked at a thread cutter in a factory. That was the level of the education that our parents had. But touching base with this book, and why it's so important, you talked about the men behind the women. The women behind the men is there's so much of that story hasn't been captured. I remember speaking to PG's daughter, and she was telling me during those terrible days, of ducking, diving in exile and other things underground, the way that families suffered, the relationships suffered. A lot of the activists were divorced during that time because they couldn't maintain a relationship with their spouse and their kids really suffered. And often we've forgotten that story. You know, what our forerunners, our activists have actually sacrificed for the nation, really. You know, sometimes we just see a superficial thing at the top, but we don't really see what happens. And the other one, on a bit of a lighter note, a little bit of my discussion with some of the activist wives of the old days, it seems to me that they were actually the throne behind their husbands. That a lot of the theories, I think, that came out of their husbands' wives was actually their wives' theories. I want to explore that in future, maybe they can write some of those memoirs. Because I think it has some sort of meaning to it too.
Very good. Thank you for that, Raj. Yeah. Other contributions? Don't all rush at once. Yes.
Yeah, thanks guys, and good evening everyone. And, well, let's say that all of you know all my mistakes and faults, you know who to blame.
You have to call him sir.
Sir, yes.
You missed this part. He was his teacher. And he's a professor in Canada. He became a minister. So if you do badly in school, you can always become a minister.
That's so true.
72 to 75, the years that Mr. Raj reported. He was very good. He was a drill master. Afrikaans, how are you going to teach Afrikaans in a creative, artistic way? Very difficult. You had to use it. It was highly organized. You know, he had these mobile what do you call it? Chalkboard, mobile chalkboard. So we have these lessons prepared, and then you move it from one class to the other, so that he doesn't have to go and write it on the board again. He had every element of efficiency about him. And he used to wear in the coldest of days, he would wear these short safari suits.
Suffering suits.
He was also a scout master, of course. All the time he was always very active in the whole range. Not that I was a scout, I wouldn't have qualified. But he was the epitome of organization and discipline. He would tell us, this is how much he earns per month, and then he would break it down. This is how much he earns a month, this is how much he earns a week, this is how much he earns a day. That means for every minute he's in the classroom, this is how much he must earn his salary. Now, we take this as just a dragon at that time, but now with the age, with the benefit of wisdom, but being ethical about having a work ethic and wanting to be value to society is such a priceless principle. So we need to use the opportunity to thank him for the experience and benefit of being a student, and I hope we come to at least 50% of the expectation. So I think, it's framed with the Freedom Charter Day, right? I think it's important to perhaps just reflect on that, because the work of Ma and MP and Monty and the whole generation of leaders across all population groups, because how revolutionary it was at that point in time for the ANC, NIC, TIC, Colored People's Congress, Congress of Democrats representing white people, to have embraced that vision of saying, all the people come together. You can talk about the tactics of organization, because organizing separately and so on, that's a very necessary subject for discussion even today, because you want to take people from A to B, but what's the best method of organizing them to take them from A to B is a tactical question, which you can debate another day. But the point is, it was quite historic and revolutionary for that point, in in time. And so you talk about the Freedom Charter, and you just take four things. The people shall govern. So some logic and wisdom is self-evident. But you try to apply it now and say the best constitution in the world, it would be fairly praiseworthy democracy and so on. But then you analyze the last election result and you say that all those who were eligible to vote, only such percentage were registered, and of those who were registered, that percentage who actually voted. But the final analysis is only 38% of those who were eligible actually participated. And you say the ANC had 40%, that 40% is actually only equal to 15% of the totality of society, so are the people governing. So it's something that should provoke us to discuss. I mean, South Africa belongs to all who live in it. Again, a very powerful statement that gave a foundation for us to come together and have the beginning of the possibility of a nationhood and so on. You know, and then now with the element of foreign nationals dominating or so much and so on, even that is being questioned as to whether it's technically correct. I don't think it's a big issue. I think it's a symbolic symbolism of the statement that's more important than the technical detail. And then it says, and I've been saying this more frequently these days because people want to be selective about things in the Freedom Charter. So those who want to choose, South Africa belongs to all who live in it, and the people shall govern. They want to be touched. The land shall be shared amongst those who work it, or the wealth shall be shared. You know, so we still got to bring people together to have that conversation. So I'm just trying to provoke the young people. I'm trying to get involved in this conversation. And then finally to say that, I mean, it's a blessing in those days, although you didn't, communication was slow, but communication was genuine.
Yeah.
And today you got the kind of fake news we have, but you know, it's fake news on steroids, I call it, you know. I mean, with the Trumpian approach, and every side's got its own army of false propaganda going through it. So what's true is something that young people must be able to also navigate, but be inspired by the sacrifice that was made by those generations. Thank you.
Terrific. No, thank you. Saraj, you taught him well about that earning every minute. Because Julie and I worked in Mr. Pilay's ministry in public works and human settlements. It made us work more than the minute we were being paid for. Yeah, so really, you know, he worked every bit as hard, so you couldn't escape that. So I think you left a powerful imprint there. Any other takers?
I was just thinking, he finished in 75. You know what happened in 76 about Afrikaans?
I'm surprised you got away with Afrikaans because they also had BC in their school, and I'm sure you remember that. Yeah, people from that, yeah.
I didn't know there was a Mr. Katrada. I believe he's not well.
It's okay.
So Mr. Katrada was a bit of a healthy fellow, right? So he sent me to go and bring the chalkboard which was left in that class which Mr. Katrada was in. Mr. Katrada used to produce a lot of plays, by the way, and I took part in a few of them. So Mr. Katrada was a provocative, he'd like to tease you and so on. So I went to the class and said, you know, I'd like to take an involuntary action. So he says to me, he's telling the class, you see this fellow, he must act like James Bond. But I love this one because the class laughed. I said, no, I wouldn't have to point at you, Mr. Katrada. I'll just shoot and bound you at some part of you.
All right, well, there's a question there. Advocate, you want to introduce yourself as first?
My name is Levin. I just want to say, firstly, greetings to everyone, and thank you for organizing this book launch. And thank you for writing such an amazing story. There is often a gap, a missing link in, and this might not be aimed as a historical piece, but there is that missing link that as we progress, there are so many people that make up what we take for granted. And when you talk of something as historic as the Freedom Charter and all of the energy and thinking that went into it, there were so many people that were part of that mix, but it would not have happened if that support wasn't there, or the guidance or the shoulder to lean on. So I think that's something that we must acknowledge. And then on a different note, I was curious when we spoke about the publication in Germany, but all of the planning, the design, the writing happening in the UK. So obviously there were reasons for that, but I'm just interested to understand how this worked, because it's not like today where you just email it from your phone, or they would have to send a person, post the document, or use some sort of a telex system to say, there must have been some, that in itself would make for an interesting story.
Yeah.
You want to pick up the storyline there about how Dad would carry the manuscript to East Germany, where he'd meet, and that story?
That's true. It was a quarterly production, and he had Eric Singh. I don't know if you know Eric Singh. You probably know him. Yeah, who was based in Germany, and he was the one to try and get things rolling on the other side through the Solidarity Committee in Germany. And he would go only when there was a problem and there were glitches and so on. So, and because the organization relied on, it was a voluntary organization, and he wasn't getting, he got a salary of 78 pounds whenever they could afford it. So there were months he wouldn't have any money. But still he used to write articles to E.S. Reddy, Inuka Reddy, who was heading the Commission on Apartheid in the United Nations, and get some money from there. And there were other newspaper articles he used to write for British newspapers on the struggle and the mobilization of the international community, the four pillars, basically. And he used to get some money from there. And that's how he used to survive, He managed to link everything in. But with actually communication-wise, of course there wasn't any cell phones or anything. That came very much later. So everything was done using the public transport from there. And everything was done by, and it was a good public transport, that you could say. It was very, you didn't have to wait hours for it. It was all planned and had a schedule, it kept the schedules and so on. It was very well organized. So I think that was the other way. And then visiting people, getting to go to somebody's house and so on, you just pitch up. I was, there was a call from Tanzania, and it was Comrade Owa, and I happened to be in the office, and I picked it up, and I recognized the voice, and he says, hello, who am I speaking to? And he asked the question, who am I speaking to? I told him, and he said, okay, do you know who I am? I said, yes, uncle, I do. We should call him uncle. And yes, uncle, he says, now, do you know my wife? I said, yes, uncle. You know where she stays? I said, yes, uncle. And I said, East Finchley, it was Auntie Adelaide. So he says, take this message to my wife, that I would not be arriving tonight, and that I will get in touch with her somehow to tell her when I will be actually. Right now, I can't tell her how. So I said, okay, you got the message? I said, yes. Okay, thank you very much. And I put it down. And I had to leave immediately. Just go there and give the message. So it all was done otherwise if I had a cell phone, I'd call Auntie Adelaide, we didn't have it. They worked this thing. And then I think the other thing was that, I think Janashakti was produced because they didn't have enough, they have to manually produce it,
Cyclostyle.
You said the cyclostyle, those old cyclostyle machines. And they were good, they were called compact. But you roll it, and you get your newspapers out. We use it in our conferences in Lusaka, so it works.
Say a word about Dad's passing.
Oh, yeah, well, that was, before he left, of course, there was a doctor who graduated with me. At first, she was a little more senior by 20 years. And she, I knew her, she was a Palestinian. And she was coming to Britain, but she didn't have any place to stay. Then I phoned Mum and I said, look, there's a friend of mine, a doctor friend of mine, and she's coming to London, put her up for a few days, would you mind? And they said, no, okay, please do. Because that was the general rule of the family, actually. Anybody came, Lomo, when he was released from Robben Island, when he came out, he came and stayed with us. Moses Mabida came and Baba Mabida came over, and so on and so forth. So there was always people coming over, but we would have them to come and stay with us, because you get all the news, That's how Dad used to work. Anyway, the other thing was that he, sorry about this, I'm getting old, so I move from one story to another. Oh, where was I?
He was on a plane from London to Berlin.
That's right. Before that, lucky the doctor was in the house, and he felt unwell, and she actually looked after him, felt his flu, gave him something to drink and so on, and he got better. But the one problem that she didn't do, and she didn't know how to go about doing it, was to straight away call an ambulance and send him in to have a full checkup of that. Because that was the initial period of infarction. I can say that now because I graduated myself in medicine. So, but the next day he left to go to Germany. And unfortunately, on the plane, he had a massive heart attack, and we were told that he felt very hot and he took his jacket off and then he collapsed in the plane. There were some professors, German professors, who were going to East Berlin, and they were on the plane. So they tried to, 3 of them or 4 of them, tried to resuscitate him on the plane, but that didn't work. So uneventful there, and of course Eric Singh went to the airport to meet him there and got the news.
When was that? What year was that he passed away?
1977, 29th of April. Yeah, that was sad. I was still a student in Moscow then. Yeah. Anyway,
No, thank you for that.
Huh?
Well, for the young people, then he graduated Moscow, he graduated Harvard. So there's when you're undergraduates, there's something to aspire.
He graduated Cambridge.
The other point was that there were 2 Germanys at the time.
Yeah.
We're speaking here about the DDR, the Deutsche Demokratische Republik, not West. So this was going to East Berlin.
East Berlin.
And they were the supporters of the anti-apartheid movement generally and the liberation movements particularly.
Yeah.
Yep. Other thoughts from anybody?
I just want to talk to those pictures that, of Moses Mabida, Yusuf Dadru, your dad. I can't remember the other comrade killed. There's that beautiful
Moses
picture.
Buller.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to talk about the anecdotes, what happened in those flats. Mom must have cooked up a storm in those flats. What was the favorite meal?
In Moscow.
The atmosphere looked
Was this in Moscow or was
the
it?
one was in Moscow.
Yeah,
I'm sure
in
the
Moscow.
ultimate.
We had David Perumal was he was also sent by the movement to study medicine there.
Practicing in Phoenix, wasn't he?
He's now got a practice in Phoenix. Yeah, he used to entertain the leadership that comes to anybody, and so they used to get this Mosey Mullah, my dad, and so on. But Mosey Mullah and my dad, they had this own funny thing between them. So when one says a funny joke or says something that sounds very, very ultra intelligent, he puts his hand out like this, and the other one has to acknowledge like that. So it was this going from it was crazy looking at that used to make us laugh a lot. And then they used to say these jokes in prison about prison life, you know, and they would take the mickey out of it. For example, Mosey said something like, there was an Indian guy, he was also a Muslim, who was a chairperson of a conference, of a meeting in Cape Town. And he had a lisp when he spoke. And so when he was chairing this meeting, he says, now ladies and gentlemen, this is, we are sitting here, passing motion after motion. I think we need a break. And he had all these funny jokes. They would take the mickey out of each other. And then they would talk about Nana Sita as well, who was one of the great revolutionists at the time. And when they used to arrest him and put him in prison, he used to say some funny things. I can't remember how he used to answer them. Because sometimes they will speak in Afrikaans, and he knew Afrikaans. And he would turn that Afrikaans into something else. And he'll respond in English, which means something totally different. And the way they gee whiz.
So Nana Sita came from the old Transvaal.
The old Transvaal.
All
those jokes.
Unless, of course, you went to school in Port Shepstone.
Oh, yeah. Gee whiz.
Any other thoughts? Because I want to draw it to a close now, and we'll have some fellowship afterwards, and you can talk to each other and so on. But just this round table, I don't want to hold you too much later. Has the Holy Spirit entered any one of you to ask a question? Please feel
I think you should give
free.
us 2 sentences of Russian, it might provoke.
Oh, you can sing in Russian.
You know,
Oh,
keep singing another day.
Oh my gosh.
Not vodka.
Вот. Ты идете мне говорить? Нет, я не хочу говорить. Завтра буду говорить. Now, if I had to translate that, of course, you'll be very angry with me. There's used some words which are not very savory. Eh? I'm joking. I wouldn't do that.
Well, we have a recording at the 1860 Heritage Center when we did it was MP's 100th birth anniversary, and we did a round table, and there was Prem talking to Professor Vladimir Shubin in Moscow, and the chatter that went on, and I said to Sarvan, just keep recording it. It was just so interesting.
Oh my God.
to
And
catch
that
up.
was before the actually opening.
That's right. That's
And
right.
well, I was so surprised to see him. It was
Yeah.
lovely seeing him for all these years.
Yeah, and of course he had his niece on that, who grew up in Edinburgh, speaks in an accent that none of us can understand. And she was on that recording as well. Closing comments from anybody before I go back to Mr. Raju? Mr. Raju, maybe as a summary of this project that's come to fruition, even though you didn't intend for the manuscript to take this form, we thought it important enough. Do you think that this is an important contribution, I'm asking the question rhetorically, an important contribution to telling the story of the struggle for South African freedom?
I think it's wider than just the struggle for freedom. It's giving voice to the silent minority, those that we don't hear at podiums. We have to honor those voices. And those of us that have the ability to write, let's tease those stories out of our mothers, our grandmothers, our fathers that are quiet. They want to talk. They want to tell the story, but they don't have an audience because nobody's got the patience to listen to them. Next time you're in an airport, find a lonely person, slide beside them and say, just talk. Now I'm quite involved in my little community, and I go to the old age homes, and the stories you hear are just fascinating. And this is the fabric. This is what made us who we are today. Capture those voices.
or a mother, or a grandmother, or a neighbor, gather those stories. Well, it's been a delightful gathering, and I want you to applaud again as we salute that golden generation of 70 years ago who gave us the Freedom Charter, and we are here today. The responsibility that falls on our shoulders is to grow this society and unite people in the best traditions of 70 years ago. So, Aman, thank you very much for your presence here this evening. The first time this book came out, we had to have an event because your grandchildren were around and you were in hospital, but I'm so pleased that we could present this book at this time while you are here. And as a message to the rest of you who might not be aware, their collection of papers, the MP Naika collection, some of which is there, is housed at this documentation center. And it's available for research and so on. The ES Ready papers are here and at Yale. There's Phyllis Naidu's huge collection, all her letters, everything that's in here. And there's of course Madiba's gifts that are also on display, and it's a massive, massive collection.
Just under announcements.
Okay. It's the Sandak ANC meeting. Yeah.
Well, it's supposed to have been the main event in Kliptown today.
Yes.
So that's been postponed to the 12th of July. 12th of July. But on Saturday, at the Monty Naika Commemoration Committee exhibition, which is called South Africa in the Making, they're having a Freedom Charter commemoration event. I think Mabuso Msimang is the keynote speaker. I think they've got some good music by, I forget the name of the
Professor something.
Professor
David.
It is there's some beautiful sax and allied music.
Lovely. And they're likely to give us wine instead of tea.
What time is it?
All right.
2 o'clock.
7.
Yeah.
At the
Moses
Mabhida
Mabhida
Stadium
Stadium,
at the
2 o'clock.
exhibition.
Yeah, and it's the South Africa in the Making exhibition, if you need
Next
to
to
find it.
what is the restaurant called now? It used to be Cubana, but it's
Cubana.
now something else. It's called
Okay.
something else. Next to the bicycle shop where they hire things and so on.
Very good. But it remains for me to say thank you to all of you for being here and to mark this momentous occasion. And that's Thiru Munsani, who's the director of the Documentation Center. Yes, so Thiru, thank you for having us in your home. And I think it's been a very fruitful engagement. I certainly was quite enamored by all of these stories. And the books there, along with a whole lot of other books, please sign the visitor's book so that we can show the statistics that only important people come to the documentation. So thank you all very much, and a safe onward journey home. Thank you.